Welcome back to Grace and Grit. Here, we talk about the real stuff, the messy stuff, and the things people don't always say out loud. Here, we talk about life, motherhood, and everything in between. All with no judgment, no pretending everything is perfect, just grace, honesty, and the comfort of knowing that we're not the only ones walking through it. Today, we're talking about something that a lot of people experience, but we don't always know how to explain it. That feeling when you're still functioning, but the drive that used to push you forward is not there. You're doing what's necessary, you're handling what has to be handled, but the spark that used to be there just isn't showing up the way it used to. That sounds familiar? You're not alone. Today, we're talking about the kind of burnout that doesn't look dramatic from the outside, the kind where you're done, but life isn't. There are some seasons in life when nothing dramatic happens, but something inside of you changes. The bills are piling up, the to-do list has more items on it than there are check marks, and every day feels like a quiet race just to keep up with what's already overdue. You wake up knowing there are things that need your attention, things that can't be ignored, responsibilities that don't pause just because you're tired. So you get up and you do what's necessary. You pay what you can pay, you answer what you can answer, you check off what you can check off. But the list never really seems to get shorter. It just keeps growing. And somewhere in the middle of that routine, you start noticing that things are harder to explain. There's a longing sitting somewhere in your chest that doesn't quite have a name. It isn't exactly sadness, and it isn't exactly frustration. It's something different than that. It feels like a sense that something is missing, even though you can't clearly explain what it is. You just know that the way you move through your day feels different than it used to. You notice it in small ways. Your appetite isn't really there anymore. Meals feel like something you eat because you're supposed to and not because you're actually enjoying it. Even the small comforts that once felt reliable don't land the same way anymore. The coffee that used to feel like a reset in the morning, somehow, even that tastes different now. Not terrible, just different. Like the experience itself has lost some kind, it's lost some of the warmth that it used to carry. You still move through your day. You still take care of what absolutely has to be handled. The responsibilities that cannot be ignored still get your attention. But the drive that once pushed you forward feels faded now. It's not that you've stopped caring about your life. It's that the energy to push beyond the necessary, it just isn't there. This kind of burnout rarely looks dramatic from the outside. There's no big collapse, no sudden moment where everything just falls apart. Instead, it just shows up like a subtle shift in how you experience everyday life. You become someone who is functioning but not fueled, someone who's present but not fully engaged, someone who's moving forward but without the momentum that once carried you. People around you may never notice, You're still showing up. You're still doing the things that need to be done. If someone asks how things are going, you might even say they're fine, because explaining the truth, that feels complicated. How do you explain a feeling that doesn't even really have a clear name? You might try to tell yourself that you just need rest. Once things calm down, you'll feel normal again. But the strange thing about this kind of exhaustion is that it doesn't always disappear with a good night of sleep. It isn't just physical tiredness, it's the kind of weariness that comes from carrying responsibilities and pressure for way longer than you realize. For many people, this feeling grows slowly over time. It builds in the background of a busy schedules and constant expectations. One responsibility becomes two, one stress becomes another, deadlines arrive, and before the last one's even finished, financial pressures linger longer than expected. The to-do list never quite empties, and each individual piece might seem manageable on its own, but together they create a steady weight that never completely lifts. At first, you handle it the way you always have. You organize, you plan, you work harder. You tell yourself you just need to push through the current season and things will stabilize. But when that season stretches longer than expected, something inside you begins to slow down. The motivation that once came naturally becomes harder to access. Starting new things requires more effort than it used to. Even the activities that once felt exciting, now they feel like they require way more energy, and, well, quite frankly, you're not even sure you have it. So you start operating in a quieter mode. You do what's necessary, you focus on the essentials, you conserve the little energy you have for the responsibilities that you cannot ignore. From the outside, it might look like you've become less ambitious or lazy to others who don't understand. But the truth, it's much more complicated. You're not lazy. You're not lacking ambition. You're carrying exhaustion. And exhaustion has a way of changing how the world feels. Colors feel duller. Conversations require just a little bit more effort. Decisions feel heavier. Even simple things can feel like they require more emotional energy than they should. There's also this strange kind of guilt that can come with it. You might remember the version of yourself who had more drive, more curiosity, more energy to pursue things. You might wonder where that version of you went. You might even question whether something is wrong with you. But most of the time, nothing's wrong with you. What you're experiencing is a natural result of a mind and body that have been operating under extreme pressure for longer than they were meant to, without relief. Humans are incredibly capable of enduring difficult seasons. Women and mothers, absolutely, we can endure. We can carry responsibilities, solve problems, adapt to change, keep moving forward, even when life becomes complicated. But endurance does have limits. We have limits. And when the pressure continues without space to recover, the system begins to slow itself down. We're on battery saving mode. And that slowing down, it can feel uncomfortable. especially for people who are used to being driven. If you've spent most of your life pushing forward, accomplishing goals, solving problems, losing that drive can feel unfamiliar. It can make you feel like you've lost something important. But sometimes what feels like losing your drive is actually your mind asking for something different. Not more effort, not more pressure, something quieter, something restorative. Sometimes the mind reaches a point where it refuses to keep sprinting through life without space to breathe. It begins pulling back energy from anything that isn't absolutely necessary. It reduces the urgency that once pushed you to do more and more and more. And at first, that change can be unsettling. You might feel like you're standing still while the world is just flying by around you. You might feel like you've fallen behind the pace that you once kept. But slowing down is not the same as failing. Sometimes slowing down is the only way to recover the parts of yourself that have been buried under the pressure. When the drive goes quiet, it creates an opportunity to notice things that constant motion often hides. It allows you to see how much you've been carrying. It allows you to recognize where your energy has been going. It allows you to question whether the pace you've been keeping is actually sustainable. And that awareness, it doesn't fix everything overnight. Bills don't disappear simply because you're tired. Responsibilities don't vanish just because your energy is low. Life still requires participation. But awareness can bring a shift. It can change how you move through it. Instead of constantly demanding more from yourself, you begin offering yourself a little more understanding. Instead of judging your exhaustion, you begin recognizing it as a signal that something inside you needs care. That shift in perspective can be powerful. It allows you to start making small adjustments instead of pushing yourself harder. Small adjustments in how you spend your time. Small adjustments in the expectations you place on yourself. Small adjustments in the way you measure progress. Sometimes progress in a season like this, it doesn't look like achieving more. Sometimes progress looks like stabilizing, like catching your breath, like slowly rebuilding the energy instead of constantly spreading it. Over time, those small adjustments begin to change how life feels again. The pressure, it'll ease slightly. The heaviness lifts little by little. The spark that once felt distant, it begins to reappear in small moments. Maybe it shows up as curiosity returning. Maybe it shows up as laughter feeling genuine again. Maybe it shows up as a simple realization that you feel a little more present in your own life than you did before. Drive doesn't always disappear forever. Sometimes it just simply goes quiet for a while because the person carrying it has been running too long without rest. And maybe that's the most important thing to remember in a season like this. Losing your drive doesn't mean you've lost who you are. It doesn't mean you're lazy. It doesn't mean you've failed. And it doesn't mean that you're stuck here forever. Sometimes it simply means you've been carrying too much for too long. And when the mind and body finally reach that point, they don't ask for more pressure. They ask for space. Space to breathe, space to rest, space to remember what it feels like to live instead of just getting through the day. If you're in that kind of season right now, give yourself a little grace. Not everything in life has to be solved today. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply acknowledge where you are and allow yourself time to rebuild your energy, your clarity, and eventually your drive. Because it does come back. Not all at once, but slowly and quietly in small moments where life starts to feel a little lighter again. And if today is one of those days where you're just doing what's necessary and that's all you've got to give, that's okay too. Sometimes survival, it's enough for now. And that's still progress. I want to thank you guys for spending a little time with me today. And until next time, I want you to remember this. Life doesn't have to be perfect to move forward. Sometimes, all it takes is a little grace and a little grit. I'll see you guys next time.